Okay, in this video we'll go over how to factor four terms to solve an equation. So here's the equation. We have x to the power of 3 minus 6x to the power of 2 minus 9x plus 54 equals 0. Now I can tell from the equation we have x to the third power, so there are three answers that we need to calculate. Okay, now, so there are x's here that aren't to the third power, so that we got to make sure the equation's set, which it is. But now go underline your terms, put a 1 there. 1, 2, 3, 4. This time there are 4 terms. So here's the setup for 4 terms. Like when there's 2 terms, we go GCF DOPS. There's 3 terms, we go GCFT. 4 terms is something new, okay? We need this big box that says grouping, okay? So I make a large box. He needs a little bit of room down here, but that box has to be fairly large. And above it, I write the word grouping, G-R-O-U-P-I-N-G. And then I make a little box under it for DOPS, okay? DOPS question mark, and I don't need to write a question mark. There's going to be a DOPS. Okay, now the grouping box is a little bit different. Here's how we set it up. We put 2 parentheses with a plus operation sign in the middle. And then I put 2 more parentheses with a plus sign, but these parentheses are going to have little spaces outside. So put the space kind of towards the bottom. If you have to go outside the box, that's fine. And finally, we have just 1 parentheses with a line outside. Okay, now we begin the grouping process. So what we do first is we put the first 2 terms in the parentheses. Just drop them down. 1x to the third minus 6x to the second. Okay, and then in the second parentheses we put negative 9x. You got to make sure you get the negative, then make your 9x negative, and then plus 54. If you have a minus sign, that has to be a negative. Okay, so that first part's pretty easy. Now in the next part, we underline these 2. And there are 3 things we check for here. Does the first number have a negative in the front? Okay, actually underline all 4 of them, sorry. Here, out of these 2, just these 2, does the first number have a negative? No, it doesn't, so we do not put a negative. Okay. Do both of these have x connected to them? They do, okay? So I am going to put an x, but not only do I put an x, I make it to the second power because we have a third power and a second power, so I always pick the lesser of the 2, okay? And then I have GCF 1 and 6, okay? And I just get a GCF of 1. Okay, so I'll put a 1 down there. So that's 3 things. You check for the negative in front, then the x on both of them, and then the numbers themselves, 1 and 6. Now, in the next parentheses, do you have a negative in front on this one? You do, so you need to put negative, negative under both lines. Now, do you have x on both of these? No, 54 does not have an x, so do not put an x under the line on the second one. Okay, then I GCF calculate 9 and 54. And I get a GCF of 9, okay? So negative 9. So then here's what I do after that. Whatever I'm dividing by here, 1x to the second, I put that out here, okay? And whatever I'm dividing by here, negative 9, I put on the line. Okay, then I take 1 divided by 1, which is 1, And on x, I take 3 minus 2, which is 1, okay? Then I take negative 6 divided by 1, which is negative 6, so I put minus 6. You don't need that first power anymore, okay? Now here I divide negative 9 by negative 9, I get 1, and then that x goes beside the 1, because I'm not dividing by x here. And then I take 54 divided by negative 9. That's negative 6, so I put minus 6, okay? Now what do you notice happened in each parentheses? Here and here. They're exactly the same. So what I do is whatever's in the parentheses, which is 1x minus 6, I put out on this line right here, okay? And put a parentheses around it. Okay, so whatever's in each of these two parentheses, you just copy that on the line and make a parentheses. Now, after that's done, you need to slash these out, okay? And what do you have left? What do you have outside here? You have 1x to the second power. And outside here, you got negative 9, so I put minus 9. Okay? Now, the grouping part's done. And now what I do here, whatever's in the first parentheses, I drop down here, 1x minus 6. And whatever's in here, that's where I check for the difference of perfect squares, okay? So remember how to check for a difference of perfect squares here. Okay? I'll get that sheet here. Okay, first, do we have x to the second? Yes, we do, okay? So x is the second number negative? Yes, it is. Minus 9 means we have negative 9. And then turn this over and see if the numbers are, quote, perfect. So 1 and 9. So 1's perfect because that's 1 times 1. 9's perfect. That's 3 times 3. Okay? And I put equals 0, and I have my F1, my F2, and my F3. Okay, so 1x minus 6 could equal 0. 1x plus 3 could equal 0. Or 1x minus 3 could equal 0. Okay, so then I dot and circle. So we plus 6. And that gives me 6. 1 times x equals 6. Now divide by 1, and 6 divided by 1 is 6. So 6 is the first answer. Now I need to minus 3. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. And then I divide by 1, and negative 3 divided by 1 is negative 3. Then I plus 3. 1 dot x equals 3, then divide by 1, and 3 divided by 1 is 3. Okay, so there we have it. Now to my next problem. I have 3 answers because we have x to the third power. And there's also other x's in there that aren't to the third power, so we need to make sure the equation's set, which it is. And now how many terms do I have? Once again, I have 4. So 4 terms means I set up the grouping and the dots, same as here. Big box for the grouping. And then a much smaller box for the dots. Okay, now here's the grouping setup. You just write that in there. So you got 2 parentheses with a plus sign in between. Then the same thing, but now you're going to put spaces outside those parentheses. Okay, and then 1 parentheses with a space outside. So in the first parentheses, we put 1x to the third plus 5x to the second. And in the second parentheses, we put negative 16x minus 80. Now underline them, all 4. So does the first number have a negative here? No, it does not. So we don't put negative. Do we have x in front of both numbers? Yep. And we take the smaller, which is to the second this time, not to the first. Okay, and the GCF out of 1 and 5 is 1. Okay. Okay, now in the next parentheses, check for the negative on the first number, and the first number is negative, so we need to put negative in both places. If you put it in one, you got to put it in both. Now, we are not going to put x because 80 does not have x. That is why we don't put x here. And then 16 and 80, I check the GCF, and that's 16, okay? So negative 16. So whatever I have under the lines here, I put out here, 1x the second. Whatever I have under the lines here, negative 16, I put out there. Now 1 divided by 1 is 1, then I take 3 minus 2, which is 1. Okay. Now if I got 1, I'm going to scribble it out quick. Then 5 divided by positive 5 divided by positive 1 is 5, so it's positive, so plus 5. And these are the same power, so you can just get rid of those. Now negative 16 divided by negative 16 is 1. Okay. X. And then I take negative 80 divided by negative 16, and I get 5, so positive 5. So look at your two parentheses. They are exactly the same. So I put 1x plus 5 outside here, put a parentheses around it. And then after you put that there, you go slash it out. And what do I have left? I have 1x to the second and negative 16. So I need to put 1x to the second minus 16. Now the x without the second power, I just drop that down. Just copy it down. It just goes right down there. Now I'm checking this for the difference of perfect squares. So again, the same idea. Do we have x to the second? Yeah, we do. So x. Is the second number negative? Yeah, it is. 16 is negative. Turn this over and see if the numbers are perfect, the 1 and the 16. So 1's perfect, that's 1 times 1, so that'd be 1x, and then 16 is 4 by 4. Okay, then I put equals 0, and I have F1, F2, and F3. Okay, so 1x plus 5 could equal 0. 1x plus 4 could equal 0. Or 1x minus 4 could equal 0. And I'm not going to get 0 on any of these answers because there's always a plus or minus we have to undo. So minus 5, that's negative 5. You can divide by 1 if you want, but it's still negative 5. Minus 4. 1 times x equals negative 4, then divide by 1. Negative 4 divided by 1 is negative 4, and then plus 4, 1 times x equals 4, then divide by 1, and 4 divided by 1 is 4. Okay, so negative 5, negative 4, and positive 4 are the solutions for the x. Okay, next problem. We have x to the third, so that's 3 answers. And there's also other x's in there not to the third, so we got to make sure it's set, which it is. So put a 1, negative 16, that's 4 terms again. So I set up the big box for the grouping, and then a second box for the dots. Okay. So grouping. So again, we know what DOPS is. That's 2 parentheses with a plus and a minus. Okay, then the grouping. Okay, and then the same thing with lines outside. and then lines out, one parentheses with a line outside. Okay, so I'm going to put 1x to the third plus 1x to the second, and then negative 16x. Remember, you got to put that in as a negative if you have a minus in front, and then minus 16. Okay, now remember what we're looking for. This is the key part. Do you have a negative in front here? No, you don't. Do you have a negative in front here? Yes, you do. Do you have x on both things here? Yeah, to the second is your smaller. Okay. Do I have x on both things here? No, so don't put an x there. Okay, now GCF calculate 1 and 1. The GCF is 1. Okay. So I put 1 with my x to the second. 16 and 16. I end up with 16. Okay. So I'm dividing by whatever I have under the lines comes to the outside, just like when I do the regular GCF, negative 16. So 1 divided by 1 is 1, and then 3 minus 2 is 1. You can delete the first power. And then 1 divided by 1 is 1, and those are both the same power, so we delete those right there. Negative 16 divided by negative 16 is 1. We keep the x on that. And negative 16 divided by negative 16, so you watch, is positive 1, so plus 1. Okay, so what do I have in each one of my two parentheses? The same thing. So put 1x plus 1. Yeah, you're going to put that entire thing, put a parentheses, and then cross it out. And then I have 1x to the second power here, and I have negative 16 there, but put minus 16. Okay, now the x without the second power drops down here because that is my F1. That's the first factor I'm going to use. But I check this to see if it's a difference of perfect squares. Okay, the second one's always the one you check. So do we have x to the second? Indeed. Is the second number negative? Indeed. Turn this over and see if the numbers are quote-unquote perfect. So 1 and 16. Well, 1's perfect. That's 1 times 1. 16. That's 4 times 4. Okay, and that becomes F2 and F3. Remember, it equals 0. So I said each one of these equals 0. So 1x plus 1 equals 0. 1x plus 4 equals 0. And 1x minus 4 equals 0. So dot your x's, circle them. And I'm minus 1. 0 minus 1 is negative 1. And then you can divide by 1. Negative 1 divided by 1 is negative 1. Minus 4. 0 minus 4 is negative 4. Divide by 1, and that's negative 4. Plus 4, that's 4. Divide by 1 is 4. So negative 1, negative 4, and 4. Okay, and our last problem, 2x to the third power. So I know right there there's 3 answers. And I've also got other x's that are not to the third power. So I got to make sure that this is set. Okay. Which it is. And now how many terms? There's 4 again. So the big grouping box, you're not going to do a GCF with 4. Okay. So grouping. And then the difference of perfect squares. So grouping. And by the way, you don't put a sign between them on dots. Okay, just on grouping you do, dots you don't. So I have 2x to the power of 3 minus a 3x to the power of 2. And then I have negative 18x plus 27. Okay, now, do I need a negative here? No, I don't. The first number's positive, but I need one here. So negative and negative, they both have to be. Even though that's positive, I need negative underneath both. You can't put under one but not the other. Okay, then x's. Well, I have x's on both here, so I definitely need x, and I need it to the second power because that's the smaller of the two. And then I don't put x here because this 27 doesn't contain x. Okay, then 2 and 3. Okay, GCF's 1, so I'll put a 1 there. Then 18 and 27. I got a 9 there, so I need to put a 9 after the negative sign. So here I'm going to pull out 1x to the second, and here I'm going to pull out negative 9. So 2 divided by 1 is 2. Then on x, 3 minus 2 is 1. And then I take negative 3 divided by 1. When I'm dividing, if I see a minus, I divide it as a negative. So I get negative 3. So minus 3. And since those are to the same power, we just get rid of them. Get that first power out of there. You don't need it, as long as it's a first power. Negative 18 divided by negative 9 is 2. And the x would stay on that 2. And then positive 27 divided by negative 9 is negative 3. So I put minus 3. Okay, so what happened in each parentheses? Oh, we get the same thing. So I put 2x minus 3. And again, once you get that, you might as well put that down here. Just pull it straight down. Now, go slash them out. And what do we have? We have x to this 1x to the second and negative 9, which makes 1x to the second minus 9. And this is where we check for the dots. Okay? So we have x to the second, definitely. Is my second term negative? Sure it is. Now see if 1 and 9 are perfect. 1's perfect, that's 1, 1. 9 is perfect, that's 3 and 3. Okay, so I go 1x plus 3 minus 3. And those are my three things. I got F1, F2, F3. Equal it out to 0, and you got your answers. So 2x minus 3 could equal 0. 1x plus 3 could equal 0. 1x minus 3 could equal 0. So dot your things, okay? And then you plus 3. So 2 times x equals 3, but then you got to divide by 2, which changes it. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. Now, to the student watching this video from Algebra 1, you can leave it 3 over 2. Extended algebra, write it as 1.5. So 0 minus 3 is negative 3. Then divide by 1. Dividing by a 1 keeps us at negative 3. Then plus 3. 1 times x equals 3. And x equals 3. Okay? And there we have it.